Hello, I'm Olivia Salazar-Winspear and welcome to this special joint edition of Arts 24 and the 51%, focusing on a possible tipping point for the MeToo movement in French cinema.
And I'm Annette Young, the host of the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world.
Well, the film sector here in France has been shaken after actress Judith Godrèche accused director Benoît Jacquot of rape and sexual abuse during their relationship, which she says started when she was 14 years old and he was 39. She also levelled accusations of sexual misconduct at filmmaker Jacques Doillon. French prosecutors have now opened an inquiry. But beyond the criminal nature of these allegations, Godrèche has spoken of a climate of coercion, of deliberate blind spots in French cinema, and how the older man had a psychological hold over her at that time.
When you don't have much bearings or fragile bearings, he becomes your home. He's telling you he's your home. He would then create a sense of abandonment, faking absences, inventing stories about his past. It's very peculiar. It's like a hand closing around your heart, squeezing it again and again, and then you can't escape.
Now, Judith Godrèche's accusations comes more than 6 years after the MeToo movement took hold in Hollywood and began simmering here in France, even if the French cinema as a whole has largely appeared complacent. Alison Sargent takes a look back.
Solidarité avec les femmes du monde entier.
Paris, October 2017. As the MeToo movement sent shockwaves around the world, France was no exception. But the calls for change were also met by now infamous pushback. The following January, actress Catherine Deneuve and 100 other prominent women signed an open letter published in Le Monde saying the movement was going too far.
Rape is a crime, but trying to seduce someone, even persistently or clumsily, is not. Nor is being gentlemanly a macho attack.
That May, women from the film industry gathered on the steps at the Cannes Film Festival, decrying the broader issue of gender inequity.
Women are not a minority in the world, yet the current state of our industry says otherwise.
It wasn't until November of 2019 that French cinema saw its first major MeToo allegation. Actress Adèle Haenel came forward accusing director Christophe Rougier of sexually abusing her starting when she was 12. Just months later, Adèle Haenel made headlines again for walking out of France's prestigious César Awards after Roman Polanski was named Best Director. The French-Polish filmmaker is wanted in the US for the 1977 rape of a 13-year-old and has also been accused by several other women.
The fact that Polanski's film was nominated in 12 categories is telling of a system within the French film industry. By awarding these men, we're putting in place a system of impunity.
More recent debate has centered around French cinema giant Gérard Depardieu, who is under investigation for rape. In December, France's public TV station aired footage of the actor making obscene remarks and sexualizing a young girl. When asked to comment, French President Emmanuel Macron praised Depardieu as an actor and invoked the presumption of innocence. Now, French cinema may be having its true MeToo moment. Earlier this month, actress Judith Godrèche filed a complaint against director Benoît Jacquot, saying he raped her when she was a minor under 15. She also accused director Jacques Doillon of sexual assault. Both deny the accusations. An investigation has been opened, and other actresses also came forward accusing the two men of sexual abuse. Meanwhile, prosecutors have requested a trial for Christophe Rougier, the director accused by Adèle Haenel, meaning the first major MeToo allegation to hit French cinema is likely headed to court.
Joining us now is actress and director Ariane and Solène Edouard, who's a member of the 50/50 Collective, a group promoting equality within French cinema. Thank you both for joining us.
And Solène, I'm going to start with you. You've been a guest several times on the 51%, and we've talked about the MeToo movement in French cinema and the fact it's been very slow to embrace the movement. So have we reached an inflection point, given that these latest allegations by Judith Godrèche and others?
I hope. We've been hoping for this moment. But I think we were not listening, or we were not listening carefully. And this time around, I feel that the society in general, of course, the cinema, but also the media are listening. Is this going to be a real movement and everything coming forward? I think there's still a lot of difficulties for the women coming forward. But I hope, yes, we're reaching the beginning of something.
And Ariane, as well as your career in cinema, you've also co-founded an association, ADA, an association of actors. As such, you're often asked about sexism, harassment in the industry. And back in December, you said that MeToo had not yet arrived in France. What's different now, do you think?
I'm still kind of skeptical. I mean, I really hope that it's finally going to change. Women have always been talking, but I'm not sure people were actually really listening. So, back in December, I would say that. Right now, I'm just really excited, and I have a lot of hope that we might actually listen to women finally. And it's not just listening, and I think the justice has a part to play in that. And we also need clear response, because most of rapes are just not punished in France. So, I'm also waiting for real answers from the justice.
Solène, how much of this is actually driven by French cultural values, and how much of it perhaps is also driven by failings within the judicial system and the fact that this country is very reluctant to point the finger at national icons?
Yeah, first, all the cases coming forward, Judith Godrèche, for example, but also the latest round against Gérard Depardieu, are coming from minors. And I think even in a society like France that is still very patriarchal, the fact that we're talking about children is something that is helping at least bring the issue forward. But it doesn't mean that because we're believing, maybe, probably, hopefully, Judith Godrèche and all the actresses that are coming forward talking about what happened when they were children, I'm not sure this is going to transform into actually believing also the adult. I mean, this younger, we're 14, 13, you know, it's terrible. And I think everyone can relate. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and it's specific to this complément d'enquête, so this program on national French TV that happened in December. It was about Gérard Depardieu. And in that Our Show program, only few minutes stood out. And it's the moment where Gérard Depardieu actually makes special comments about a very young girl in North Korea. And this happened in front of a camera, in front of everyone's eyes. So all of a sudden, in your living room, you have this French icon that is sexualizing an 11-year-old girl. And I think this was a shock for everyone. But as our other guest was saying, I think the judicial response has not been here. Yes, women have been talking. They actually have been talking before the MeToo movement, but they've been talking a lot since the MeToo movement. And no one is behind bars. I mean, so...
And this is when you contrast it to the US, for instance.
Of course. I mean, Harvey Weinstein is in jail. Nobody in France is in jail right now.
Now, Ariane, if we talk about the place of French cinema specifically in the cultural landscape here, we're talking about these icons, as Solène mentioned, national treasures, people like Gérard Depardieu, but also filmmakers, this special status that France has of the auteur of cinema. How much do you think that influences perceptions here?
Yeah, it's definitely a difference that exists between France and the US. For example, it's this creation of an auteur, which started during the Nouvelle Vague, who gives basically all the power to the director. He's also the writer and has a control over all the cast and everybody and everything, which if this power is put into the hands of a person who is not really willing to take care of people he's working with or just be respectful, meaning maybe being an abuser, this can lead to something very, very dangerous. And I think that's one of our French exceptions, and that's also why it's so difficult for some people to maybe step back and lose some power. And I think that's also one of the reasons why that in France we're scared of the intimacy coordinator that exists and worked for 6 years now in the US and in the UK, and most of the French directors are afraid of it and just refuse to use that, which I think says a lot about the fear of losing power. Actors also have an opinion and they need to give their consentment to do some scenes, and it's very hard for an actor to say no to the director on set, and all of that culture, it needs to circulate and I think people on every level of the production need to be aware of that and start to learn.
Indeed, speaking of institutional responses, France's public body, the National Centre for Cinema, which finances and promotes film here, has been under pressure to tackle what some term a culture of sexism and harassment in the industry. Here's more on the measures they've taken.
To help the producers meet our obligations regarding sexual and gender-based violence, we organised a mandatory training course to help them understand what the challenges are, how that can play out, what we define as violence, etc. In 2024, we'll maintain this mandatory training course, and we'll make it obligatory for the entire film crew so that everyone in the process is involved in preventing sexual and gender-based violence.
Solène, what do you think of these sort of initiatives?
Well, of course, it's great. I mean, you cannot have anyone on set saying, well, I didn't know I was not allowed to do this, or I didn't know I was not allowed to do that. So I think definitely this is something to encourage. I think the question is this really enough? Because this is the conversation we had just earlier about and also with Ariane, the balance of power. It's not enough when you don't try to shift the balance of power.
Ariane, you started this association recently with other actors. Was it prompted by what you felt was a lack of solidarity between female actors? And, is it really seen as a need for a support network as such?
Yeah, definitely. It was not really a lack of support. It was a lack of communication, basically, and a lack of sharing our stories and our traumas, basically. And so, it really appeared that it was an emergency to gather all together and to start to try to raise our voices together. So we decided to create that group to exist and to take part of the conversation about how things should be.
Well, as the industry undergoes a reckoning of sorts at the moment, the cultural magazine Télérama actually published an editorial admitting their complicity in promoting certain filmmakers. They apologised, in fact, for their role in this. Solène, how much do you think the media is at fault?
It's hard to tell. It's also hard to tell how the media is actually treating this question right now. I think it's hard to go back in times, 30 years ago and see where we should have done this, we should have done that. It was probably even worse. So I think what is interesting is to see what the media is doing right now. How the media is actually listening or not listening to women coming forward. And yes, some of them, especially Télérama, I think also Cahiers des Cinémas, they also are saying maybe we didn't do the right things, 30, 40 years ago. But these are different teams. Again, these are different journalists, different generation of journalists. These are also women, also at the head of those magazines right now. So it does make a difference.
I want to ask both of you, starting with you, Solène, how much of this is actually generational? Are we going to have to wait for a generation of older men to retire from the industry before we see some sort of significant change in the sector?
Well, I hope not. I think, yes, it's definitely generational. As I was talking about Gérard Depardieu earlier, the women who started also bringing the case is the youngest one. And she was then joined by older actresses. And I think because she was young and she was from a different generation, she couldn't even think accepting what happened.
Ariane, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I agree totally. I just hope that we can also find allies into the oldest generation, so we can actually go through that together. And I don't want this to become a war in between the young generation and the oldest one. So yeah, like Solène said, I really hope that this can happen right now. There's also a sense of emergency, and I hope this can be heard now that the change needs to happen now.
And Ariane, do you think that, for example, as someone who's a screenwriter and a director as well, do you think this new generation of women behind the camera, or perhaps in more producing roles, women like Justine Triet, Céline Sciamma, Mathilde Diop, who are being recognised, do you think that will necessarily change things?
It's not only about the behavior on set, it's also what story we're sharing to the world, and what fiction we can access as an audience. And this has a huge impact in our society. So the more we can also listen to different stories made by women, or made by, not only white male men, heterosexual, this might finally open a new relationship to fiction, and I think this can also open eyes and mind. Yeah.
Well, let's hope so. Thank you very much to both of you for your time. That's all we have time for, sadly.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this special edition. You can catch both Arts 24 and The 51% on France24.com. You can also find both shows on Instagram, X and Facebook. So bye for now.
Bye for now.